Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are today. You are watching our Build an Agent workshop in the year 2026. I am Amy Gilstein, your field marketing manager here at Cloud for Good. During our time together today, your lines will be muted and your chat is disabled, but we do encourage you to ask questions as you are building via the Q&A, which is wide open. This webinar will be recorded and shared via email and on our YouTube page. I do see some new faces on the call, so hello and welcome to you guys. And let me do a quick intro about Cloud for Good. Ryan, you don't mind going to the next slide?
Yep.
Let's talk about what truly sets Cloud for Good apart as the Salesforce leader in the impact space. First of all, experience matters. Cloud for Good is trusted by 25% of the top 100 largest nonprofits. Our depth of experience means we understand the complexities unique to mission-driven organizations. That trust is reflected in our results. We have a 4.9-star rating on the Salesforce App Exchange, one of the highest among Salesforce implementation partners. Our clients don't just complete projects, they grow long-term relationships with us because we deliver lasting value. Our team brings deep Salesforce expertise across nonprofit and education solutions, from fundraising and student success to marketing automation and AI. We build systems that align with your goals, not just your data model. And we're more than implementers, we are advocates. Our deep Salesforce partnership allows us to represent the voice of our clients within Salesforce itself. That means that your needs and use cases help shape the future of the platform. And finally, we are innovators. Cloud for Good has developed proprietary accelerators and assets that help our clients reduce risk, speed up implementation, and scale their technology faster. And if you don't mind going to the next slide, Ryan, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you. You guys are so lucky. Today's expert here is going to lead us through this is Ryan Blake. He is our Director of Solution Engineering here at Cloud for Good. I will let Ryan introduce himself and you can take it from here. Thanks as always for being
Awesome.
here, Ryan.
Hey, yeah, of course. And thank you, Amy. Appreciate it. And Happy New Year, everybody. As Amy mentioned, my name is Ryan Blake. I'm the Director of Solution Engineering at Cloud for Good. I have been here for 4 years and really kind of seen the opportunities that not just Salesforce, but really kind of the questions people are coming up with and how do we do this and where's the value? And it's been exciting for me to put some of these things together, particularly around this Agentforce workshop, as I think there's a lot of question about what it can do, how does it work, and the more hands-on training and guiding that's out there, the more we're empowering ourselves and really the community to be able to really take advantage of it effectively, especially when we think about the ongoing questions, demands that we might be hearing from individual users, departments, or groups. So that is me in a quick nutshell. I'm going to get into things pretty quickly. But the first thing, and really the objectives today are, we are going to talk briefly about the discovery process. I am not going to spend a lot of time on that because I really want to take today to do a hands-on building workshop. So you're going to see me kind of flipping through some screens. I'm going to try and do it. I'm going to use the word nonchalantly, but something that doesn't give you a headache. I'm also going to try and go at a pace that everybody can keep up with. All of this is documented. All of this is written down. So this is something that you can actually take and do on your own. But if there are questions or things, you are welcome to put them in the Q&A. And I believe we should be able to allow other people on the call to answer some of those questions as well. So as we get into, and then we're going to talk in the last point about just call it a POC of kind of building an agent blueprint that we'll talk about at the end, and then some additional things about what Cloud for Good is doing in this space. So before we actually get there, on your, and I think we should have a screenshot of this, in your Zoom window, you should see a tab at the bottom that says resources. I want to encourage you to click on that. And in there, in the resources, you should see a links. The very bottom link says build an agent guide. Go ahead and click on that. And it should open up a new window. That window will be a lot of what our resource guide is in terms of how to build this agent. Before we actually get started, the idea is that we're coming with a provisioned environment that has Agentforce in it. Because Agentforce works and based on data, part of this workshop is actually asking you to install a package that allows for the data to be processed. So I want to encourage you all to not use an org that you are using in your own work environment. I actually am discouraging you that you do that. And that you spin up a new environment at salesforce.com. So you can take this URL, you're going to put it in the window. And here's where you should be able to go and be able to sign up for a new environment. Now, I'm already logged in, so it knows who I am. But this is where you can sign up for a free environment that has Agentforce as part of it. We are not going to get into the depths of Data Cloud today. That is a whole nother session. But this is what you're going to want to get things started. So if you haven't already done this, I want to encourage you to do this now so that when we get started, you are able to keep up. It should take a couple minutes, but before we get there, I'm going to talk about kind of that the first part of this whole process. So here we go. So there's that. If I go back to the slide deck. So for those who are still new to Salesforce, the first thing that I'm going to really touch on is what is Agentforce. I always like coming up with my own definitions. Try to be less markety, but also be very realistic about what it is we're looking at. So in this sense, Agentforce, it's identified as a platform. So this is where there's a lot of things you can do with it, but it is really working through autonomous AI that is powered by generative AI. And I think that's really important to know that Gen AI is what's powering Agentforce to really differentiate what we should be expecting when we're thinking about what is the difference between predictive analytics as well as agentic analytics. And then it's also leveraging some large language models to really be able to get you what you need in real time with real-time business data. All of that becomes important. Now, I usually have a spiel. It's like autonomous. What does that mean? And what's something autonomous that we have all out there? I like to reference self-driving cars as being autonomous. If you haven't ridden in a Waymo, I would say take the opportunity to have that experience just to see how they operate and what's happening. Sometimes those things just kind of blow your mind a little bit about what's possible and even the features that go into it. But the way agents are set up in Agentforce is really in kind of four primary pillars. The first one is about a role and identifying what the actual job is of the individual, which we're going to clearly define today as we build this out. The second one is going to be data. If you are expecting AI to work without data, there's another magical aspect happening there that I do not know what it is. Data is the foundation for any AI that we are looking at. Even if it's predictive analytics, all of that is centered on historical data. A large language model is a comprehensive set of data that generative AI is leveraging to be able to understand what that next best word or phrasing makes sense in the context of the situation, right? So we need to have data that's there. And this is where, for today, we're centering that specifically all within Salesforce. The third one is about the actions and guardrails. And this is really identifying what it should and should not do. I like to identify it as kind of the job requirements or descriptions about what somebody is supposed to do. And the last one is the channel, right? Where do we want this to surface? Are we thinking about on the website? Is this just internal for staff? Do we want this to surface up in Slack or Teams as an example? All of those things need to be identified. Now for today, we are going to very much focus on an internal employee agent that is centered on Salesforce data. And we're going to be very explicit about the type of job it's doing. You're welcome to make your own variations. Troubleshooting will be a little bit more difficult, but at least it'll give you a sense and we'll explain things along the way and what we're doing, where and when. Now, in building an agent, every project in Salesforce, I would say, starts with good planning and discovery. And I would say that's no different with Agentforce and AI. So in this, I have kind of come up with kind of three categories, but really 6 pillars of information that we need to really start driving how we put this agent together. So the first one is the first one is actually a problem statement. I think on my next slide, I have a saying that says good AI is helping solve problems, something like that. We'll get to it. But the initial one is we want to be able to identify what is the actual challenge? What are we trying to overcome? Can we clearly identify that, even in natural language, on what challenge we feel is there and how do we solve for that and where do we think AI is going to solve for that? We want to come up with as business objectives and goals, right? We have this problem. What are we expecting out of the AI? And can we be very direct about what it is we're asking for? This is about creating less ambiguity. The more ambiguity we have within AI, the more challenging it is to get the results and expectations that we're asking for. I would actually compare that to a person's job. If you leave a lot of ambiguity in terms of you assigning responsibilities to somebody, you don't know what you're going to expect as the outcome because they're just kind of taking their own interpretation of it and just running with it. We don't want that to happen, particularly with an agent. We want it to be very explicit about what it should be doing and what those outcomes are going to look like. The next is about identifying what those expectations are and the outcomes, right? This is where we're going to start setting up and understanding what these things look like. And the last one is about the success metrics. Anything that we do with AI, we should be able to identify what the return on investment truly is. This is where a great AI starts with a real problem, not just cool technology. There's the quote right there. Here's some examples of problem statements that we've heard from customers and clients. Like our forecasts are off because planning relies on manual spreadsheets, all the way to just tracking program and case follow-ups across multiple systems, right? All of these things are coming up with problem statements where there is room for AI to come in and make that impact. Now, as that AI discovery comes in, not only can it be used for all types of AI, but specifically with where they relate to the different areas within Agentforce, there are things that are called topics, topic actions, and then topic instructions. We're going to walk through that when we start building this and putting this together. I am honestly just giving you all time to get your org set up, established if you have not already. But all this is kind of where these things apply and are in alignment. For today, we're going to focus on this particular problem statement, which is about development spending too much time digging through records to be able to understand a constituent story and interpret kind of what the next steps are. So we're having challenges with that. Officers have to, if you think about Salesforce and familiarity with Salesforce, there is an opportunity to store a lot of data on somebody, particularly in the fundraising space. So the more that we have, the more challenging it becomes for an individual person to look at that, click through it, and assess what matters most and how we can start taking action on it. So we're going to do a very minimal version of what that looks like today to kind of assess some of that stuff and see some feedback. But then we also should be identifying that problem statement, why it actually matters. There might be problems, but the why it matters may not drive us to actually develop an agent in itself. So we want to be able to identify this, and we want to be able to empower individuals to take action, not just create friction with where the data lives. And then how might AI help, right? We want to focus on what matters most in building those relationships. So if we can identify these three things, we've already started that discovery process to be able to get to where we need to go. Now, the next step of this is filling in that chart. So I've identified the problem statement. I even came up with the use case of what I wanted to be able to do. And I've filled in every column of this to figure out now, here's what I'm expecting and what I'm going to start building towards. All of this is about planning. Like I said before, any Salesforce project starts with good planning and discovery. It's exactly what we're doing with this agent. It's very easy with the configurability, just be able to turn on and start putting things together. But if we do some planning, we're going to be able to meet some of those expected results and success outcomes early and often to be able to think about what reinvestment looks like. So if I were to focus on these success metrics right here, this is what I would be expecting as a value add outcome by bringing this to the table. The one that I did, and I will be honest, I just made this up, but I wanted to set a metric, is be able to get greater than 15% of dollars generated beyond the cost of service. And when I say that, it's Agentforce has a cost to it. I want to be able to implement Agentforce and now be able to say, not only can we pay for itself, we're also raising more funds on top of that to be able to say, now this is an investment that's worthwhile because we're actually generating revenue and not just spending money to be at status quo. So with all that, the agent we developed today is going to be able to do these four things. So we have a problem statement. Data's kind of everywhere, even within Salesforce. We want to be able to synthesize that to make it happen. Once we build this agent, we should be able to identify the correct contact and its related household information, not just the person, but the other people that are related part of it as well. We want to be able to retrieve key information and have it summarized. We also want to be able to have it provide a professional engagement summary with specific insights about that individual and their fundraising and giving. And then we want it to be able to make some additional recommendations for next steps, right? This is what I am expecting as part of this. This is where, when we come up with that discovery and we think about what the agent should do, we should be able to identify these things almost as a stress test to say, this is what I'm building towards, and this is what I'm expecting the outcome to be. Anything outside of this means we need to tighten up what some of the aspects of the agent are actually is as we would build it. So with that said, all of you should now have an org set up. I think Amy put in the chat that link. For those who may have joined late, if you do not use your own sandbox in this case, because we are going to ask you to install a package just to accelerate some of the development, knowing that some aspects take a little bit longer to build, and we only have 45 more minutes, and we're going to get through it all, to say the least. So yeah, so this is here. You're welcome to scan the QR code, or we provide the link in the resources tab in the bottom. But to just get to the next steps of this, I want to make sure I know what I'm looking at here, is I'm actually going to go and jump back to this outline here. And actually, I think I have a different tab I want to get to. So this is the, here we go. This is the Agent Builder site that you all hear. Step one is just getting the environment set up, right? So once you have this established and you are logged in, which is what we want to do, this is where we're going to be in the setup area. So I'm just going to go over here in the setup. And the first couple of things that we need to do is we need to be able to turn on the Einstein Generative AI functionality. Now, for some of you, this might already be turned on, which is totally okay, but we're going to turn on all of the functionality. So if you turn on or type in Einstein Generative AI, we want to go to the Einstein setup. And in Einstein setup, we want to turn it on if it's not already turned on. And then we also want to turn on the prompt builder settings. So go ahead and check those boxes to turn that on. If we flip back over to this, the instruction page, this is where it's going to install the workshop package. Now, this was developed because the orgs that you have is not specific to any particular data architecture. It's ultimately just Sales Cloud. So this package is just going to put some fields and some data in there that's going to be more in alignment with what Education Cloud looks like, or Nonprofit Cloud for fundraising, or, and honestly, because it's a Sales Cloud model, same thing would be effective if you're on NPSP or EDA in that sense. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this package link. I'm going to do Control C or Command C if you're on an Apple. I'm going to go back to my org that we're using here. And I'm just going to, after the .com, I'm just going to delete all of that. I'm going to paste in that package URL. So this is making sure that the package is installed in this specific org, and it's going to allow us to process that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. This is where we should see the CFG build an agent Dreamforce 25. We happen to have done this at Dreamforce in 2025. We're going to go ahead and install that. I'm going to go ahead and hit install for admins only. Because this is a developer environment, my anticipation is that you are not installing this for all users, and we'll look at what it's really installing. But I'll go ahead and hit install. I'm going to let that process. Now I'm going to pop up the components in here just to call out a couple things of what we're bringing in. This is where we're bringing in some field level data. So we have it in a fundraising capacity, knowing the developer org doesn't have Education Cloud or Nonprofit Cloud enabled in it. We're also bringing an app that's going to have some additional instructions and processes, and then some resources to allow us to be able to not only have a pre-written prompt template, but also some static resources where we're going to seed some data in our org. So we're working with actual data and not S-Force or the fake data that typically comes. And then we also have some automations in here and just some simple flows to be able to gather the data as the flow is still needed as part of that overall process. So once this is done installing, which is, as you can see, was relatively quick, if you click view in another browser, this is just going to take you to the implementation guide. So now that we have this installed, I'm going to go ahead and hit done. In your installed packages, you should see what we just put in there. This is also why you should not be using your own sandbox, but should be using a developer org. Now, as you're asking, I saw there's a question about where's the link. It's in the instructional guide. So I'm going to go ahead and put the instruction guide in the chat here for you to do that. And then it's down in part 1 where it says install workshop package. This is what we want to put after your URL. And I'll put this in the chat as well. You want to put that after your domain name. So whatever your URL is after .com, go ahead and paste that right in here. And then that'll install the package. Now, if I go back to the setup, we have this installed. This is all ready to go. And what we need to do is we're just going to run a process that's actually going to seed and load all of your data within the org. This, for some of you who are not super Salesforce savvy, or are new to Salesforce, or are just not a developer, you're going to feel like a developer with some really simple and quick commands and a bunch of copy and paste. So while we're in our environments, this is where we're just going to run and execute a process to actually bring the data in that we want to be able to look at and leverage. So upper in the right-hand corner of your screen, you should see this gear icon that says setup. You're going to go ahead and click on that. And we're going to go down to where it says developer console. This is going to pop up a window that's going to look a little bit unfamiliar to some of you, but this is what we're going to do to start loading in data. We're just going to copy and paste a simple command. From here, you want to select debug, and then you're going to go ahead and open execute anonymous window. You can use Control E or Command E if you're on Apple. But once we hit that, we're going to see another window pop up. And I'm going to jump back to this instructional page. And this is where on this instructional page, you can copy and paste this script here, where it's ultimately saying we want to run this process for these objects and load in the data from these static files. So I'm going to hit Control C and copy that. We are going to pop up that developer console window, where if I back up again, you go to debug, open execute anonymous window. We're going to paste that in there, and we're just going to hit execute. Now on the bottom, we should see nothing but successes on the bottom. If you don't see successes, I'm going to venture and say that you're not using a brand new developer org and something may have had a conflict. But the idea is that we are just doing this. Some of this should still work. If the package installed, if you already have data in there, this should still work in a very similar way. We just don't have data on the fields that were just loaded. So now that we've run this, if you want to say like, did this actually work? Short answer is you can go back into your setup in the rainbow waffle, as some call it, or the app menu. If you type in the word CFG, we're going to get to an app that we have in here called Agent Builder. This is going to take you to a page to where not only do we have a link to the instruction page, but we can actually go to our contact list. So I'll go ahead and click on contacts. And if we change this to all contacts, we should now see individuals who are not a part of that initial org that have something like demo.invalid after it. Or you'll see something with an account name that has household associated to it. If you are seeing that, then everything worked and you are going through this perfectly. Now, I do want to preface and say what we're doing now is a setup to make sure our agent has something to look at. In a normal environment, you would be building your agent in a sandbox, and you're going to have data based on your use case. So you don't need to be doing this part of the process, but this is how we're going to set up for the workshop today. So we've gone through the loading data. We're now in this part 2 where we need to enable Agentforce. So if we go back into our Salesforce environment, we go back to the setup menu and hit setup. We are in the quick find box. We can type in the word agent. And we're going to go to Agentforce agents. Now, I think when I was running through this yesterday, I already had it turned on. But what you want to do is you want to go ahead and check this box to turn on Agentforce. We are not going to go through the new Agentforce builder today. Having gone through some of that myself, this is actually allowing AI to build the agent with AI, which is really meta. But the overall goal is for them to be able to streamline what that looks like. I want to take you through step by step how an agent is constructed. Even if you use the new builder, it's going to allow you to troubleshoot any of the challenges or issues or how you might want to upgrade it later through your own processes versus expecting AI to be able to do those things for you. So we're going to go through the native process. I'm going to go back to the home page just to see where we're at here. So we enabled, we've turned it on, and we're now ready to actually create our first agent. I'm going to pause for a second and see if there's anybody who needs to catch up or has questions. And I'm just going to take a second. Please throw it in the chat if you do. All right, nothing's popping in. But I'll keep an eye on it. And thank you, Amy, for also keeping an eye on it. So as we create a first agent, this is where we're going to start. And we're going to go back into the tab that we're just going to close that one, the tab that we're just in. We're going to go ahead and click on New Agent. This is where we are starting to actually develop and define what that job is of the agent, kind of that first pillar of the 4 pillars of an Agentforce agent. And we are going to go ahead and select Agentforce Employee Agent. You can see there's a variety of templates that are already here. These have a variety of use cases, and there are more than what's actually here. If you're on Education Cloud or Nonprofit Cloud, you'll see additional templates existing here. If you are using a Slack user as an example, you can do something that's specifically for Slack and looking at your Slack data, but also built in here and presented within your Slack environment. Today, we're going to focus on the Agentforce Employee Agent. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And the next button is in the upper right-hand corner. So from the Employee Agent, I'm going to go ahead and hit Next. And then we are going to deselect the general FAQ. The primary reason behind that is because we don't have any knowledge center set up in our current environment. But this would be a pre-built topic that would allow the agent to already know what to do when questions get asked to search and reference knowledge articles. They're going to hit added to deselect it. So you'll just see a plus add, and then you're in the right spot. Now, this next one is where you are welcome to have some fun. But we're going to go ahead and name this agent. Again, like I said before, this is where we're identifying what is the job of the agent itself. So on our instructional page, I have some pre-built and pre-constructed context. The first one is just giving it a name. In this, I always encourage, identify the agent in terms of what its role is and give it an appropriate name. It's very easy to come up with a name, particularly in a testing environment, that's like superhero agent. I don't know, insert superhero name here, type of agent, right? Have some fun with it. But it's also harder for then your employees to recognize, well, what is the purpose of this agent? Sometimes when we identify that by the name itself. So this is going to be a constituent engagement assistant. That is its goal. Now the description here is what, again, pre-generated, and we're going to copy and paste this part of the description, that its job really in its description is assistant to generate a comprehensive overview of a constituent's relationship with the organization, consolidating certain data, summarizing information, and highlighting some of those engagement steps. This is what we would have identified in that discovery process of this is what we need the agent to do itself. I'm going to go ahead and delete the description that is there. I'm going to paste in what I had previously written and copy and pasted from the instructional page. The role is in that next piece. And this is where I write these as being able to tell the individual where you can see like you are. So if the agent is asking itself, what am I, who am I? That sounds really Disney in a sense, like, right, who am I in this sense? You want to be able to clearly articulate to the agent what its role is. So it knows and it understands what it can do, and it's the start of how we are establishing certain guardrails of what it can and can't do. And the last part of this is the Cloud for Good Foundation that I'm just adding in here. You are welcome to put your company or any other company information, but when it starts to self-identify about who it works for, this is what it is going to reference as part of that process. All right, now that we've copied and pasted that all in there, we're going to go ahead and hit next. And in here, this is where we can start to turn on Data Cloud. We are not turning on Data Cloud today, but as you think about how we want to be able to reference even Salesforce knowledge, if you have a bunch of knowledge articles set up, if we want to be able to reference PDFs, if we want to reference an external knowledge base from another system, this is where we have to turn on Data Cloud. Today, we are not doing that. That could be a future session, but we are going to go ahead and create this agent without access to knowledge, recognizing it still has access to Salesforce information, just not a traditional knowledge library of information with pre-written articles and answers that somebody might be able to reference. So I'm going to hit create. And there we go. So if you got that same error I did, I'm going to go back, and it's because of this API name, we need to have underscores on it. So I'm going to go ahead and add underscores on here. This is how you know this is a live demo. And we're going to go ahead and next, and then we'll hit create again. And we should be able to bypass that. That is a Salesforce admin, maybe 101. API names cannot have spaces. So now we have our agent, and it can do absolutely nothing. So we're pretty blank in terms of its capabilities right now, which is totally fine. If we go back to the instructional guide, just to catch us up as to where we are now on the part 4, which is about creating a topic. If I go back to the agent builder, a topic is really the area in which the agent knows what it should do, and it's being activated based on the natural language as being typed within its chat conversation inbox. So when we think we want the agent to be able to do these things, we want to group those in particular areas and clearly identify what it's supposed to do and the scope of work that it has access to or actions that might be associated to it. So when we go ahead and create a topic, we're going to create a new topic. I'm going to hit new topic. This is where, again, Salesforce is instilling AI within its capabilities to where if you're like, I don't know how to build this, you could type in a whole paragraph of information. AI is going to be able to assess that and then be able to say, all right, here's how we're going to build this topic and be able to kind of start putting things together for you. I'm going to skip this part. I'm going to hit next, and we're going to build this all manually. The first topic that we are, maybe the only topic we're going to do today, is really focused on data gathering and engagement summary. We're being very explicit about what this agent can do. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here and do that data gathering and engagement summary. I'm going to tab over so that API name pre-fills. And then I'm going to go back and look at this classification description. This classification description becomes really important when the agent starts going through the reg engine to be able to assess and be able to take comprehensively what the person asked all the way to what it knows how to do. The classification description is what's leveraged as part of that process. So we want to be as clear as possible and very explicit about what it's intending to do with this topic in this classification description. So when this one says the topic ensures the agent collects all necessary information about the constituent and then generate a summary based on the contact ID, this is where this is going to identify if it doesn't have these things, it's going to go back and ask more questions. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, put this in the description, and then we'll see what the scope of work is, which is focus on guiding the user to the right contact and summarizing it. While they seem redundant, the description is what the topic is, and the scope is about what it should be, the boundaries in which it should stay in. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in there. And now we have instructions. This is where if you think about in training any type of employee, you are giving them hopefully you're giving them very clear instructions about what they should be doing, but also about what they should not be doing. I worked in admissions for 8 years. And one of the things that they always told us is you should always be promoting the institution, getting people excited, and really talking about the admissions process. But you should not talk about financial aid. We have trained staff in that. That can get really complicated very fast. And it was very clear that if there were questions about financial aid, we should get them to talk to the appropriate people. That evolved over time with training and with experience, the same way that we'd be doing that with our agent, right? We're being very explicit up front about what they should be doing, as well as being very explicit about what they should not be doing. And as we train and evolve the agent over time, those instructions can change and adapt. So if I scroll back down, this is where we're going to add these topic instructions. Now, all of these are individual. I've been asked in past, can I just copy and paste the whole thing into one blob? You can try that if you want to experiment. What I have found is when you do it in one blob, it's very similar to what I see with other generative AI models, is that when you put everything into one instruction or into one prompt, something gets lost in the mix. It only focuses on certain areas of it. When we put these in individual instructional lines, it has a lot more clarity because it's going through each one line by line and calling it out as something I have to pay attention to, often also calling out conflicts of information. And that's what can happen if we put it all in a blob text or paste it all into one instruction, is that there might be conflicting statements in there and it'll get confused and tripped up just on that individual instruction. So I'm going to add in all these in there. These instructions, right, always use the appropriate information, always offer to take the next step of drafting an email or creating a task. We want the agent to be courteous and supportive. So rather than asking it to do something all the time, we want it to be able to kick back to us and be like, do you want me to do this? Always base summaries on recommendations and strictly on Salesforce data. This is where we say, do not generate, assume, or fabricate information. This would be considered a guardrail, making sure that the agent knows, do not just make something up because their last name is Blake, that they're related to another Blake in your system. Like, you have nothing to base that off of. We want to make sure the agent doesn't go rogue in that way. And then we're going to put this, do not display links or share Salesforce URLs. This is something I put in there just to prove that like the instructions do make a difference and how we build things. So once we have those instructions in there, we should be able to click next and then finish. So we're going to get to topics. These are all pre-built topics and we're going to select some, but we're going to select some in a little bit. But these are ones that you could take if you've already built a topic that you're using for another agent, or Salesforce coming with a bunch of out-of-the-box topics. These are things that you can add. This is where you want to test and make sure it's doing the things that you're expecting it to do. We're going to hit finish. So now we have our first topic. This topic is what is going to drive the entire aspect of what the agent knows to do. I'm going to pause there for a second and make sure everybody's caught up. Awesome. You're all doing great. I know I can't see you, but I'm sure you're all doing great. All right, now that we have that topic, this is where we need to get into topic actions. And I want to take this in kind of two steps. The first one, we're going to set up the topic action, and then I want to go back and I want us to be able to look at what did we just set up in a more retro kind of perspective. Because there was some work that's already done, that part of that package, that I think it's important for you all to have context to. So we're going to go through this and go through the topic action. And the first thing we're going to do is click on the topic name. So if we go back to our agent builder, I'm going to go ahead and click on this data gathering and engagement summary. And in here is where you would have the opportunity to update and change any of your instructions or content or add things. The one thing I didn't talk about was this example user input. This is how we can start to train the agent to listen for certain kind of keywords, phrases, things that the person might be asking for or even suggesting for when this topic might get triggered. We're not going to go through this today, but this is where you could start testing things out to say, well, if somebody asks for something that is jargon within a particular industry, as an example, if we were to put jargon comments in here, the agent's going to recognize that and make sure that it understands it in the context in which the person's asking for. So that's just one example. The other thing I just want to call out is this kind of AI aspect on the right. If you were to click on this, this is actually going to look at how you've written the instruction and provide some opportunities for improvement. So if you wrote something that was extremely ambiguous, not very clear, it's going to call that out and make some suggestions about how you can improve that to better enhance what the agent experience is. Okay, I derailed myself. Now that we're on the topic, I'm going to actually click on this expand panel button just to make it a little bit bigger, to work on a little bit more of a bigger interface. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on this topic actions at the top. This is where we are going to create a new action. So I'm going to go ahead and hit new, and this is where we can see not only can we take it from the asset library, which we will in the next step, but we also can look at things that might be from the agent exchange, where individuals can actually create functionality to support agents that you can use as part of your custom build, but bring in the same thing that we'd see as part of like the app exchange in your CRM. So we're going to create a new action though today. In this action, we are actually going to leverage a prompt template. What I am excited about this with the actions is that you can leverage all of the declarative functionality as well as custom solutions to really be able to pull and exchange data in the way that you need to. But today we are going to use a prompt template, and then we're going to go look at that prompt template. You likely only have one that's available. So we're going to go ahead and select constituent summary and recommendation prompt template. And we're going to leave everything as a default as is right there. We'll hit next. And this next part is where we need to start giving it instructions about this action itself. So one of the things that you might already be recognizing is the agent needs a lot of instruction for it to be able to function. I very much equate that to us as humans. The difference is, as humans, we have learned some of these instructions through our day-to-day work experience, things that we've experienced. This agent is being born brand new for the first time. It does not know the difference between green and blue, right? We need to tell it these things so we can start to learn and understand what it should be doing through these very explicit instructions. And even as I say the word learn, I think we all, I always make the joke that we've all learned that 30 miles per hour doesn't mean 30 miles per hour. It means don't go too fast because you're in a residential area and they want people to stay safe. So there's some social construct to it, right? I'm not asking you to raise your hand if you speed over 30, but myself, right? If I go 32, the rule is 30. The agent in this sense would stay under 30 to meet that limit, which is what we want AI to do. We do not want it to go and make some social norm assumptions when it could be wrong. So as we have this, when we are creating this agent instruction, we want to be able to say, now that you have this information, here's what you should be doing next, right? So the agent instruction in this sense is once the contact has been identified, a valid contact ID is confirmed, run this action to generate the professional summary and take the next steps. The other one is having a guardrail within this too. So it's never provide a generic summary without a contact ID. That means if the agent doesn't have a contact, it will either ask you to validate, is this the right person? Or it will say, I don't have a contact ID, so I can't do what you're asking for. Not verbatim, but it'll say something to that extent. We'll go ahead and copy this instruction. We're going to paste it into the Agentforce instructions. And then we're going to show the loading text for this action. This is part of the way that you can validate that it's doing the action that you want it to. And this is where I say you can have some fun. So I'm going to put in a loading text and say, hold on, grabbing a snack, and then I'll get back to you. That's probably too long, but I'm going to put that in there anyways. And this is what will show up, and we'll see it and test it here in a second. But now that we have the instructions for what this action should do, we actually need to put some instructions around what the inputs are and what the input should be, and then what to do with what the actual output of this action is all happening. So as we look at this, this is where we're going to take these individually. So when we look for the contact, we're going to take the contact record returned by the summary. If this is missing, ask for clarifying questions so the contact can be summarized. Now, this first one on here might be contact ID. I'm going to put this under contact. The second one is going to be the contact ID. We're going to copy and paste that and put this in here. If missing, ask the user to clarify which contact should be summarized, right? Again, we're giving it instructions every step of the way to make sure the agent knows when it should be going back. And then once we have that, we're going to set required inputs to make sure they're true. If they're not already selected, we want to make sure they are. This is how we know that the agent is following those explicitly. If we didn't require the input or collect data from the user, it starts to get a little bit more ambiguous in terms of what is happening, and it takes a lot more testing. So this is one way to control those variables to make sure the right data is coming in for the right action to be able to fire. Once we have that filled out, we'll see that the next one is to be able to look at the output. We are not going to change anything with the output instruction. We just want to make sure that it shows the output in the conversation. This is what we want to do, particularly with the prompt template, because the prompt template is really what's generating the response. So the agent is actually going and running that prompt and is going to pull that back and put it into its own version within the screen itself. So with a prompt template action, make sure that you are putting show in conversation as the output, as that output is coming directly from that previous action. And then hit finish. All right, and we have our first action. This is where I do want to take a sidestep a little bit. And when I go ahead and click on this action, this is where we're going to see what it's pulling from, and it's referencing this specific prompt template. Now, there's two ways to get here. I'm going to go ahead and just click on this open the reference action, and this should take me directly to the prompt template itself. This is what was installed in your org, and I proactively put together to help summarize and capture the information and format it in a way that we want it to be able to look. You are welcome to play around with this as well. But in here, you can see we're doing very similar things to what we did with the agent before. We are taking this, we are saying, hey, in this prompt template, you are acting as a development officer and are tasked with creating a summary of information. Follow these instructions explicitly so that the output makes sense to the end user. And this is where in a prompt template, we are having to adjust these to make it make sense. A good example is when I started pulling this data together, the agent actually took the information from a giving record and it actually took away the dollar symbol for all the numerical values of what somebody has given. So in that sense, I want to say, if you're looking at a number related to dollars, make sure it has the dollar symbol. If you wanted to convert it or make it look at it from in Canadian as an example, it's something you'd want to be able to put within your prompt template to be able to test that output and make sure it's what you're looking at. We are also then putting it into the format. So this first part is looking at the instructions, and you can see we have this in somewhat of a markdown format, but we are looking at it in instructions to say, agent, make sure you are reading this explicitly first. We are kind of doing a break, and then we're saying, here's what we want to include as part of the template of what the output should be looking at. So it is identifying this, and within this templated output, it is actually using some Salesforce flows to go and capture the data and pull it back in and format it in this way. So all of these things are broken down. Now, some of you are thinking like, Ryan, why do you have 3 flows in there? Yes, I could have done this in one simple flow. But I would say it's just how I was trying to gather the information and what I wanted the output to be. This is what I went with initially, and it worked, and I was excited, and I didn't have any kind of things fall through when I started to do some negative testing associated to it. But there's a variety of ways you can do this to be able to bring in those flows and creating a prompt template flow to be able to pull that data in and get the responses that you're looking for. And then be able to make some recommendations for next step outreach. This is one area that I will call out is going to be relatively generic in terms of what we're looking at today, but we likely want this recommendation for next step outreach to be based off of something. whether that is a strategy associated to our organization, or it is something based on other data associated to the user's record. Like if we've already done personalized outreach or invited them to an event, make sure we're not recommending the same things. So that takes some additional work, but we're going to see what this looks like when we start testing this. And the last one that I put in here is important guardrails, right? Don't make assumptions. I'm reiterating the fact that all of these things should not be automated and everything is for human review. That is very intentional about me being very thorough about what I want the agent to do and what it not to do. Now, when you have this, you can test it and preview it. We're not going to do that right now because we're going to do it in the agent. But this is how that prompt template gets broken down. And we start kind of building into to make sure when this action fires, we want it to follow all of these things through and through. Now, if I go back to the builder, we're going to go back to the action. We're going to be back in this topic. So if you completely backed out, we want to go ahead and click on data gathering and engagement summary. We're going to click on this topic to actions. And just for context in terms of where we are at, we have already done this step. We are at part 6, which is add additional topics. So if we go back into the agent builder, we are going to go into new and we are going to add from the asset library. This is where we have a comprehensive list of things that can be in here. And again, I would say test and understand what these things do before you add them. But we're going to add 2 specific things. One of them is going to be identify records by name. So this is where it can look at an individual's name and find a matching resource, kind of like our global search, where we just type in the word Ryan and it looks for all the Ryans. It's going to do that same thing here. So we're going to identify record by name so we don't have to proactively supply the contact ID. We want to just be able to identify it. I hit finish too soon because we want to add more than one. But we're going to also add another one, and this is going to be about drafting an email. So we're going to go ahead and select this. You can select these all in one fell swoop. You don't have to hit finish. That was my own. So if I wanted to select a bunch of them, I could. I'm not going to. We'll hit finish. And then we should ultimately have 3 actions as part of this, 3 topic actions as part of this topic itself. So now all of these things are what the agent has the capability of doing. And this is to the point to where at this stage, we actually have a completed agent. This agent is actually ready to function and work. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this window or at least reduce it. And then on your conversation preview, if you already are ahead of me and you're already testing and it's not working, this agent is still based off of the initial establishment where it doesn't know anything. We just added a bunch of stuff. It saves automatically, but we need to refresh this conversation preview to make sure that it accepts and understands the latest changes that we've made to the agent, which was everything that we just walked through and added. So now as a first touch point, I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this prompt to just say, can you summarize Brian Bennett? Brian Bennett is an individual who is already in your org. You're welcome to test somebody else. But if I go ahead and do that, this is where we should see it's working and it's thinking. We're going to see that it's going to go grab a snack because that's what I said and wrote into that individual action show text of when it's doing. It is working through that prompt template and gathering that data and information to be able to piece this together. And this is now where we can see on the right, we see that specific output of what we looked at in the prompt template in the format we asked it to, following the instructions of not doing it bulleted, but in a narrative format, all the information that's a part of Brian's record in itself. In the middle is where I want to focus right now, being that we have some time to really hone in on what are we actually looking at. So when we are seeing this, we know that this was what the user prompted. The topic that was selected as part of this process is what was captured based on 1, it only has 1 topic, but 2, we can validate that it was doing what it should have. So the instructions that are listed here are all the ones that we copy and pasted. This is what the agent is running through and looking at it 1 through 6. Now, I've been asked in past, does the order of operation matter? The short answer to that is I have not seen it make a big difference. However, I also try to think about it in the way of what is the most important instruction, and I try to just put those things first anyways. So for those of you who remember your middle school science, I don't have a control variable to validate that. Either way, I would say be very intentional about the instructions and what you put in there. And this is where we want to validate that it's following those things explicitly. From here, it recognizes that part of this topic, we have these actions we can take advantage of. From this entire comprehensive experience, we can see the prompt that was used. So it is looking at it from the sense of it's looking at the topic, it's reading it, and it's starting to put some additional layers of security that Salesforce speaks about with like the trust layer, these are things that I didn't write, right? So it goes through and it has my instructions that I added in there. It will go ahead and add things like never reveal information about toxic policies. I didn't write that. That is a core functionality and feature and some of those built-in guardrails to ensure trust as part of this overall process. So these are things that I would encourage you to look through to really be able to assess what is Salesforce doing to making sure that it is creating that safe and that safe environment for our people to really interact with without me having to think through every use case and scenario, like instilling bias or certain phrasing that might be had in here. So all of these things are here. You don't have to understand all this as much as be able to see some of those instructions that get captured in it. But again, it allows you to see how that's happening and working in real time. Now, this is where we see one of those action launches where it's identify record by name. I put in Brian Bennett. It looked and said, let me see if I can find a Brian Bennett. It found those search results. And as part of those search results, it also found the contact ID. And again, it followed through the next action to be able to find the right action. Yes, I will speak to that in a second, Nancy. We're going to look at this here. And then we can see the prompt template in terms of how it generated that. So all of this is how we would test that. Now, we're going to go and activate it. And then Nancy, I'm going to answer your question in real time so we can actually look at Brian's record. So I'm going to go and activate this agent. You will see that configuration issues detected. We did not enable Data Cloud. We have not set up any permissions for this yet. That is the next step we're going to do, and that we're not enabling this in Slack. We're going to go ahead and ignore all of this and go ahead and activate. Now that this is activated, I'm just going to hit the arrow in the upper left-hand corner to go back. We're going to hit leave. We didn't make any changes since we've saved it, or since it automatically saved. But what we'll see is now we can click on this agent. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the agent name, and you can see there's some version control here. This will open up a window where we can start adding permissions to it. Agentforce only is given access based on who we permission it to. So we can do this based on permission sets. Today, we're just going to do profile because you should be the only one in this org. And we're going to go ahead and select system administrator. And I realize I clicked through that really fast. So if you select the tab that says profile with Agentforce access, you want to go ahead and hit add, and then just select system administrator. And then you'll hit add, and then this will make sure that you have access to that agent itself. Now, from this window, because we just gave ourselves access, I'm going to type in that CFG and go to the agent builder. And in the agent builder, not only do we, let me go back to the homepage here. Not only do we have this kind of workshop home where you have a link back to the instructions, we can see what we've done so far, but it has some of those next steps in terms of here's some additional things that we can start testing. From this is where your end users would start interacting with Agentforce itself. So click on the agent. We can do that same prompt of like, can you summarize Brian Bennett? And to Nancy, your question on, I'm looking at Brian's record and don't see any opportunities or giving history. We don't have the full giving object model in here. So what we should see is two things. So if I actually just type in Brian Bennett and go to his contact, we're going to validate this here. So we don't have any opportunities, we don't have any cases, and it says there's no case history here. When we look at the details, part of it is because those fields were not added to the page layout. So the fields that were installed should be here. So if I went and added, I probably don't have time to do this. You can go and add some of those fields that are just looking at the information. If we needed to roll up, this is where we would use a flow to start bringing those things together. Now, it does talk about the environment sustainability project. And when we were building our agent, one of the things we asked the agent to do was to not just look at the contact, but look at the household that Brian is associated to, or the person is associated to also pull in that information. So if we go to the Bennett household, this is where we see that opportunity associated to the household, which also involves Chris Bennett as part of that process. So the confusion part is I'm asking about Brian, it's giving me something about it's not on his record. You're right, it's not on his record. It's a part of the household comprehensively. And this is, in my mind, what we actually want the agent to do. We don't want it to be so narrow that it's missing areas of opportunity in a household structured model. We also want, and that is not just within NPSP or EDA, but even thinking about education cloud and nonprofit cloud, there's still a household data model where we are associating things to multiple people that need to be able to tie. If we looked at Christopher Bennett, we should actually get the same information about this opportunity and anything that's associated to his record, which is nothing. But this is where if you go to any contact record in your environment, if we just go to view all. Oh yeah, the gift date and stuff is data. It's there. It's just in a hidden field. But perfect, Nancy. But this is where I would say play around with it. Look at someone like Christine, who does have a case. And let's ask to summarize Christine Thomas and kind of see what changes as part of this process. And this is where I don't have, or I haven't gone through like the, let's draft an email, let's talk about the next steps, but we'll do that here in a second. So this is where you see no opportunities about our household, but we do get that case relevance of like, here's the information we need to know about the case. So it's pulling that data in and giving us some insight relevance. Even the recommended next steps, this is what I appreciate about the case, is taking in context the case and saying, hey, the case was about a processing issue. Maybe we should follow up with her because nobody has. Let's do the next step. I'm just keeping it very light because I know we're about at time. But now it's come back and saying, like, what do you want to do? Yes to the email. And it'll start to draft that email for me because that, again, is another action that we instilled as part of the agent itself. We have not given the agent the ability to be able to create a task for us. That would be another topic action, so it could do that. But even sending an email, I think what I like about this button is it just pops up the email modal, proactively adds Christine to it, and we can start adjusting this as needed, or we can go back and forth with the agent to make this more relevant to what we want to be able to say. So with that said, I think I have about 4 minutes left. You all didn't ask any questions, so I'm going to assume that you went through that swimmingly in terms of being able to make it work. The last thing that I do want to show is on the instructional page, which we walked through all this. On the instructional page, there is a little Cloud for Good icon in the bottom. This is an agent that I put together to kind of start taking some of those grandiose ideas that people think about. This is a proof of concept. This is also a dev org, so I don't know if this is going to get turned off at some point in terms of this agent and how it's being used. But if you were to go in here and say, I want to create an agent to build a marketing plan and recruit new people, as an example, like it'll take that and it's going to say like, great idea, because AI likes to reinforce your ideas. Here's what I need to be able to do that. And this is where I really try to be intentional, is like when you put in your idea in this case, it's going to say, all right, let's dive more into this. Who is the audience? What are the tasks? What are the data sources? Things that you should be thinking about when you're really thinking about implementing AI. This is also where Cloud for Good comes in that like you doing this proactively helps us know how we can really be supportive and actually standing up maybe your first agent if it's not taking advantage of our Cirrus agent. So that is what the agent builder is. You're welcome to play around with that, and you're welcome to shoot me an email, hit me up on LinkedIn with questions. But the last thing I want to call out is our Cirrus fundraising agent. Some of what we did today is a small taste of what is in our fundraising agent, but it's really about leveraging the platform and AI-powered identification to be able to ensure that the interactions are relevant based on what might be a compelling event. These are things I'm more than happy to give a demonstration on. And the exciting thing about the fundraising agent is it's not just built for nonprofit cloud or education cloud, but it's really built for any Salesforce environment that's specifically using it for fundraising. I see a question that I'm just going to answer really quick, Amy, and then I'll pass it to you. Didn't see how you pull up the actual panel on a contact page to ask your prompt. If I just go back, that's not the right one. Let me close that out of confusion. In Salesforce, and I think the way that we've built this agent, you don't have to be on the contact to know what it's asking. But it's just a little agent icon up here. This is where you can pull it out. The agent will be there. If you have multiple agents, you can actually sift through them and choose which one you want. I like pinning this because then it becomes a part of your page. And if you're really interacting with the agent, it is all going through it. If you don't have that icon, I am going to guess that you didn't activate your agent. So go back into the builder, hit activate, and then assign yourself that permission. So just for clarity, it would be part 8 and just activating your agent and then assigning your agent to yourself and your profile. and then you should see that icon. And with that, Amy, oh, the last thing I have, right? And if you are like, Ryan, this is great. I would love to be able to talk more with you. We do have a AI readiness assessment offer that we can do as a solution engineering team. These are things that we'd be happy just to kind of walk you through that initial discovery exercise that I highlighted to be able to see where at your organization there might be some prime opportunity and what even like an MVP agent might look like, even just pilot it yourselves. So don't hesitate to contact us about that. We already
Ryan,
answered some questions.
we are at time. We actually have one
Yeah.
question that I think is quick,
Oh,
if
okay.
that's okay.
Please.
Can you use the account ID rather than the contact ID when setting up?
Oh, 100%. A lot of that just comes in what it's asking for with the prompt template. So if you wanted to literally copy and paste all of this into your own org to get started, you would just need to update the prompt template. And you need to look at updating those flows to make sure that it's capturing those right details. If you're on person accounts, for example. Today I did it on an account contact model, but you would just need to update it so that you're explicitly looking for the account ID and in instructions, identify that you're looking for the account ID. So short answer is yes.
All right. Thank you, Ryan. This was a
Yes.
really great live workshop. I enjoyed it. So let me close this down because we are at time. So before we say bye, folks, we're leaving you guys with some next steps. On the bottom of your Zoom screen, as Ryan mentioned, is a tab aptly named resources where you can find all of these things. You will find Ryan's Build an Agent Guide, which you can reference after this ends. You can also do deep dive into Cloud for Good Cirrus fundraising agent. We'd also love to chat about AI at your institution, which Ryan mentioned. You can please reach out with that link. And the last one is we have lots of exciting webinars planned for 2026, including the Aspen Institute chatting about change management on February 9th, Salesforce Security on February 19th, and strengthening membership communities with Marketing Cloud on February 25th. Once again, all of these resources are located in the resource section of your Zoom screen. And with that, just want to close this down. This webinar will be up within the next few days. Ryan, if you don't mind going to the last slide to thank everybody. It'll be up in the next few days on our channel, and you will receive an email from us as well. And if you're watching us there live, or if you're watching us there from the future, I'm happy you found us. If you are watching live, you'll get a survey that pops up immediately after this webinar ends. Please provide feedback. We do read all responses. Thank you again for joining, and we'll see you at our next webinar in-person event soon. And thank you, Ryan, for that really great workshop.
Yeah. No, thank
All
you
right.
all. Appreciate it.